Hello, everyone. My name is Dustin with Everything Movies and Shows. And this next to me is.
Jacob.
We're going to talk about one of my favorite animes of all time, Claymore. I started watching this a while back, and I just fell in love with it. I love it to death. And this is his first time ever watching it. So I also wanted to compare the differences with the manga and the show itself. What little differences there are. But basically, one of the reasons why I fell in love with this show is due to the music. I love the music in this show. Yeah, what do you think about the music?
I thought it was really cool. I liked the intro. The intro was interesting.
Yeah, like I don't know.
I guess the show was early 2000 when it came out.
Yeah, it feels like the animation in general. I like how it feels a lot like Bleach, kind of not like the show Bleach, but like how it's animated, the old school feel of it. It feels like an older school anime, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, the tone of it. I almost didn't think I was gonna like it because of what you were saying. Because the first time I was watching it, it was kind of like an older. The style was a little bit older,
Yeah.
and I was like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna like it. Because that first scene is, you're like, wow, that artist, that animation is kind of rough, but it gets a lot better. It's just, to me, it just shows how gritty this world is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what the show is about, you get this organization, people in the world call them Claymores. They don't really have a name that I know of, but they're just called Claymores. Anyways, they're half human, half Yoma. Yoma are these creatures that eat humans, and they love human intestines. They like to eat you while you're alive. It's very gross.
That's interesting.
It's very, very, very gross. But anyways, claymores are the only ones who can kill these creatures because they're the only ones who can sense them, who can find them. Because whenever they become you, they take over your brain. They talk like you. They look like you. And you can't distinguish one apart from any other individual.
I think it's interesting how they have it set in a medieval time period. Almost.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love. Is set that medieval time period.
Almost like a Dark Souls vibe. Like with the
I don't know if I go with that far.
Well, just in terms of like the castles.
You don't see them all rolling around doing fat rolls everywhere.
I just like in terms of like the castles, the stones, a very dark environment.
It is that vibe. That's one reason why I like it so much. Anyway, so the show starts when the first scenes. I thought really captures the whole show brilliantly. It's all red. You see the first Claymore we see. She's there, and you see that Yoma. The first Yoma we see. He's eating something. He killed somebody. You see blood everywhere. The whole scene is red. And then he runs at her, and she just cuts him in two. Basically, and that right there sets the whole tone for the whole movie. The opening scene, I was like, that is a badass scene. Scene was, I was like, well, that's badass. And then we get to the town. So the first town we get to, and they're having a little meeting in the town about a Yoma killing people. And the mayor lets everyone know that they've called in a Claymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we get to Claire, our first Claymore we meet. What do you think of Claire?
I think she's interesting. I think the whole like take on the Claymores are interesting because they're very skinny, and yet they they are like the most powerful beings, like humans, I guess, slash humans, in the existence. But it's just like you wouldn't expect something like that. They're very fragile looking.
Well, in the manga, whenever she's killing, well, let's go back a little bit. So after she walks into town and then she meets Rocky, and she almost kills Rocky.
Mm-hmm.
Did you catch why she almost did that?
I thought it was because she didn't expect him, walking up behind, but didn't. I don't know. That's what I expected.
Not exactly. So Rocky's brother Zaki, he's the one who is the Yoma in town,
right?
And his scent is on Rocky. So whenever he came running up behind Claire, she's like, if that was a Yoma, she went to go, kill him. And there's a guy. And of course, she didn't say that because she didn't want him to know that his brother was a Yoma, you know, or she wasn't for sure if his brother or not. She just knew he's been around a Yoma. So whenever they meet, they talk, and whenever they're first talking, my favorite music in the whole show comes up. I love it. I would play it in the video, but I'm pretty sure I can't play the music without getting in trouble. So I won't be playing the music. But it's one of my favorite tones. It's what really made me love this whole show so much. Because I don't know any other manga that has music like in this. Or
It's very metally. It's very like hardcore rocky.
It is
kind of like
hardcore.
Amazing. It's very dark. It's like got those dark tones, which is interesting. Typically, you get more of an uplifting beat when you're talking about animes. You know,
yeah,
a more fast paced. Like I don't know, not so much dark though, for sure. You know,
it is pretty dark.
It is.
It is pretty dark.
But I feel like that goes with the show a lot because it's a very dark show. I mean, just what it takes to be a Claymore is pretty brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, what they have to go through is pretty brutal. Which they don't really talk too much about what they go through in the first episode, but they do more so later. Really more so in the books than in the anime itself. Right. But after Rocky and Claire meet and talk, Rocky runs off to go cook for his family, and that's where he finds his uncle dead. And that's when he first learns that his brother Zaki is a Yoma. So this is where the book, the manga, is a little bit different. Here's the manga if you're interested. First, volume 1, right here. I love this thing. So what's a little bit different is whenever she first comes in the show, she cuts his arm off as soon as she goes through the ceiling. Mm-hmm. Well, in the manga, she misses his arm, and he doesn't know how powerful she is. So he's like, "You're just a little girl. How can you hold that sword? I'm gonna kick your ass," basically. So he doesn't know what she's capable of. Then whenever she starts fighting him, she's just whipping his ass, and he's like, "Oh my god, what's going on?" And she ends up cutting off one of his arms, like in the anime when she first comes in, cuts off his arm. So then he gets scared and grabs Rocky, and he's like, "Well, you can't get me if I have him hostage," and she cuts off his other arm. He's like, "Oh my god," and he starts begging for mercy at that point. Yeah. Which is kind of. He doesn't really, he begs a little bit in the anime, but not so much like he does in the manga. In the manga, he's really begging, like, "Please let me go," and she just has no remorse and cuts him in two.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the fight's a little bit more detailed in the manga, but the fight's great in anime. I mean, it really is. It's great. The way they do it.
So is he held hostage twice in the manga versus once in the
No, in the manga, in the first episode, he's held hostage twice, but in the show is only towards the end of the episode.
Interesting.
So also after this scene, Claire leaves to go to her next mission, but in the manga, she leaves. But Rocky isn't kicked out like he is in the show. Mm-hmm. In the show, they kick Rocky out because they're afraid he's affected by Yoma. Yeah. Which makes no sense. You think if you're living in a world like this, you know how you get affected, and you can't just be affected by it. But whatever. But in the book, it doesn't. He leaves on his own free will. Okay. He leaves. He doesn't want to be there no more. But they kind of allude to him being kicked out.
Okay.
But it doesn't show it. He more or less says that he left on his own free will.
Interesting.
So then when we get to the next town, or I guess Claire saves him. He passes out in the desert, and then that's when we get to the next town, and that's when we get to our next Yoma, who is dressed up like a Claymore, and then takes Rocky hostage again, and she throws away her sword, and whenever that Yoma punched a hole through her stomach, when the first time watching it, I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, that. I mean, especially if you don't know what, if you only watch in the perspective of just knowing that episode, it is pretty brutal. You don't even really know what to expect because you don't know what she's capable of. At that point, you don't know, anything about the Claymore. So I feel like when you take a blow like that, it is pretty significant. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, when you see her spitting out blood,
exactly.
you know.
Exactly. You almost think she's gonna be dead. You know?
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I was like, man, because this whole show when I first watched it, I was the whole time I'm like, oh my god, are they gonna kill her? You know, because I was watching Game of Thrones while I was watching this, you know, for the first time, and I was thinking, oh my god, they're gonna kill the main character. So I was going a little nuts.
Yeah, I could see that, especially in Game of Thrones because they kill off everything.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways, this Yoma punches her through the stomach, but yeah, it was all part of her trap. You know, she ends up killing him, and then she ends up taking Rocky, you know, with her.
I always found that interesting how she lets Rocky tag along when it's like she obviously doesn't want him around, but then like low key wants him around.
Well, I think she does want him around, but she's just hard to get close to somebody because she had kind of had the same experience where her family was also killed off by Yoma, and her town actually did kick her out of the village. You know, and you know she still has a human side of her. She still she still wants that companionship.
That's why she mentioned she was forced to join the organization in the first place.
Did she mention that?
Yeah. And it was probably the beginning of the second episode.
She, in a way, yes, that is correct. In a way, yeah, we'll have to get into that later. But a couple of differences between the manga from whenever Claire leaves the first village. So after she leaves the first village, she goes to her next assignment. This is before Rocky leaves or anything.
Uh-huh.
She goes to this. This is really cool. So she goes to the next assignment. She gets to this town, and then she meets the mayor. And he's like, "Hey, here's your money for coming to our town. We'll help you find this Yoma." And she's like, "You don't have to talk." And then kills him right there. Cuts his head like in half, and it turns out to be a Yoma that was impersonating the mayor. And everyone inside is going crazy, freaking out. Oh my gosh, she just killed a human. She just killed a human.
I was looking at that in the manga. I've seen the pictures of the dude's half head.
Yeah, half head. That was so cool. Yeah. He's like, if you just got a little bit closer, and then he falls over dead. You know? So that was pretty cool.
Interesting.
But for the most part, the manga versus the first episode is pretty spot on. The first manga volume 1 actually covers the first 2 episodes, and it has a little bit more in there, but you know, just like that scene I just talked about. But for the most part, it's pretty spot on to the anime.
Right. Yeah, and see, I feel like, well, from what you said, it seems very similar, but they are forced to add more details because it's it's a manga, it's a book, so it's like, you know, you want it to be a little bit more interesting. And that's why I feel like most mangas are slightly better than the show themselves because they have because they have slightly more detail.
It's not at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
like books.
Exactly, that's what I was gonna say.
Most books are better than any movie.
Yeah, because they have more detail. I mean, there's very few books that follow along with the actual movie, like word for word almost. And Harry Potter was one of those, you know. But I didn't think that it was. People always complain about it not being good because it didn't follow close to the book. I feel like, you know, having more details in the books is what makes them slightly better. That's how, you know, people shouldn't be focused so much on them being so much alike. You know, let the books kind of do their own thing as long as it follows the story. You know, fairly similar. You know, more detail I feel like is better. So
yeah.
I do think that the manga is pretty cool in that aspect. How, you know, when the fight scenes, they're pretty similar, but they have more detail. You know, there's a little bit more to it than, you know, in the show.
Yeah, almost always. Yeah, always a little more detail. Did you like that first episode?
I did. It was, like I said, my favorite anime is Death Note, and I get crazy Death Note vibes from it. Like, especially with the way that the Yomas look. It looks just like the demon from Death Note with the sharp teeth and the skinny fixture and the
I guess in a way, dark, in a way similar. Most of the Yomas are green, or he's black, isn't he?
Yeah, and that one he's black. Yeah. See, I haven't seen a whole lot of the show, so I didn't.
Well, I mean, most of the Yomas are green, but I was like, in Death Note.
He's more black and white. He's more gothic-y look. Yeah. He's got that more.
Good spikes on him too, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, that's what I say. It's just the facial structure. It's very, diamond. Their face, from what I've seen of the game, is very diamond shaped with those like skinny, sharp, teeth that look like you're just like a piranha almost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you get almost
Yeah.
the same facial
Yeah.
structures in Death
I
Note.
can see that. Yeah, they're both very similar in that aspect. When you get to the face,
And even the eyes, and you look at the Yoma, like when she goes half Yuma, and her eyes change to
Yeah.
like yellow. It's you can see like the whole.
that's why they call them silver-eyed witches.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense. You can see the whole like similarities between Death Note too, because the demon in Death Note has very weird eyes. I don't know. There's not big comparisons, but they're subtle. They're very subtle comparisons you can take between the two.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like I like Claymore more, is it gives me a lot of Death Note vibes to it. Like subtly, but
I definitely watched Claymore before I watched Death Note. It's one of the first ones I watched.
I watched Death Note when it was like just after it aired. So this was back 2008, 2009 is when I was watching Death Note.
All right, well, I guess we can end on that. I love this show, and we'll get into the next episodes as well. We'll do one episode a week. That's the plan. But appreciate you watching. Have a good night.